Hey guys, it's Judy from Nutrition with Judy. Okay, I hope you guys are having a good week. I am so excited today. I have with me Kait. She is better known as Health Coach Kait, and she has amazing graphics out there. So simple, so clean, and it explains the carnivore or a meat-based diet so well. I am personally friends with her. She is such a sweet person. We met at KetoCon, I think like 2 years ago now, and she is a wealth of information. We did a long walk in Austin. We walked the lake, and then we had like a little snack at Whole Foods, and we just had a good time catching up and having community. I can't wait for you guys to get to know her a little bit better and see who's behind all these graphics. Let's get right into it. Hey guys, it's Judy from Nutrition with Judy, and today I'm very excited. I have with me Kait, who is also better known as Health Coach Kait. I'm sure most of you guys follow her. She has incredible graphics. They're very simple and clean, but they, bring so much insight into a meat-based diet. So Kait, thanks for joining me. If you can kind of introduce yourself to people that may not know you.
Oh, well, first off, thank you so much for having me on, Judy. I'm so excited to catch up with you too, because we connected when we met at KetoCon a few years ago, and yeah, I miss you.
I know, I miss you too.
So I am an online health coach. I promote low carb diets, keto diets, carnivore diets, all meat-based. And I guess I'll go a bit into my story and how I sort of came to be in this space. Growing up, my family ate what I considered to be a healthy diet, lots of whole grains, cereal, margarine, low-fat yogurt, all that stuff. And I was pretty active. I played a lot of sports growing up. But as I started to go through high school, I started to put on weight, and I couldn't really understand why that was happening, because I would have like yogurt for breakfast, Special K cereal. I would have like hummus and carrots and that sort of stuff, and granola bars for snacks all the time, pasta for dinner. And I couldn't figure out why I was starting to gain weight. And I just kind of figured that's like how I was meant to be. I was always going to be sort of the bigger girl in the group and whatnot. And then after high school, I sort of continued to put on weight. At a few years after high school, I got into cycling and endurance cycling. So I was riding for long distances. And that's when I got more interested in nutrition, because I would ride for 45 minutes, an hour, and then my energy would completely tank. And so I was trying to figure out what I could eat before my rides, what I could eat during my rides that would help me. And obviously the mainstream is all about carbs. So you'd have your oatmeal before with bananas and maple syrup and whatnot, and then you'd have these gel packs all the way through. But that didn't really seem like the best option. I thought that there had to be a better way. So that's when I started getting into paleo and eventually keto. And every time I changed my diet, my health and like my fitness and everything just went up one more notch. So the first thing I did was I completely cut out sugar. And I was a pretty big sugar addict. I realized afterwards. At the time, I didn't really realize it, but I was always having something sweet, even if it was like a granola bar or cereal or whatnot. But like I always was having small desserts. So when I went paleo, I cut out all of that. But then I went keto and I cut out all the natural sugar as well. And that just took it one step further. But I was still finding that I was relying a lot on like fat bombs and keto desserts. I was replacing a lot of the desserts that I used to have with keto-friendly desserts. And that's when I came across the carnivore diet, which at first obviously sounded completely insane to me. But the more I looked into it, the more it made sense. And I originally tried the carnivore diet for a week, and then I tried it for a month. And when I tried it for a month, my sugar cravings went away completely. I didn't have that urge to snack. I didn't have that urge to have desserts and whatnot. And that was one of the best things about carnivore, was just how it improved my relationship with food, because before I thought, yeah, it was kind of like relying on it for emotional support. The one other thing that kind of does tie in, is when I was doing all the cycling, from my late teens, I was on the birth control pill because I had really, not irregular, they were regular periods, but they were always really heavy and I had really, really bad cramps. So I was put on the birth control pill for a few years. And when I started getting more into paleo and whatnot, I stopped taking the birth control pill and my cycle stopped as well.
Oh,
So at first I thought that was due to me over exercising and cycling too much, but I stopped doing that for 6-8 months and nothing improved. And I went to a bunch of doctors, an endocrinologist, a naturopath, did everything. No one could tell me what was wrong. So I was very frustrated. And 1 month into the carnivore diet, I got my cycle back. And not only did I get it back, but I barely have cramps anymore. And it's, a lot lighter than it used to be. And it's been like that ever since. So right now I eat like a mainly carnivore diet, but carnivore-ish, as you call it. So I do include a few keto-friendly plants. And that's kind of where I'm at now.
So then for you, I mean, in the community right now, there's a lot of like, oh, for your thyroid health or endocrine health or hormone health, you need to incorporate carbohydrates. But it sounds like for you is kind of the opposite. Like by removing all of that, maybe increasing fat and protein, you got your period back and you have less symptoms. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought as well. And actually, when I went to the endocrinologist, he had told me that I needed to go on thyroid medication and that I would be on thyroid medication for the rest of my life. And I was kind of like thrown off by that. But I didn't take the medication. And then a few months later, I got tested again and my levels were completely normal. So it's, I don't know.
So what would you say was the biggest dietary change? I mean, I know you said you went more carnivore, but like, did you eat a lot more protein, fat? Like what was different in your diet from when you didn't have the period and the endocrinologist was like, you need to get on thyroid medication until you got your period back?
Yeah. So when I first started keto, I think I was still in the mindset of limiting meat. And trying to have a wide range of plants, make a whole bunch of like Buddha bowls and salads and do all these crazy recipes. And I wasn't really eating too much meat. Like I was having some beef, eggs I was still eating, but not much meat. So obviously when I went to the carnivore diet, I upped my red meat intake especially, and just meat in general. And I think also my fat as well, probably. I think I was eating high fat before, but I was focusing mainly on things like avocados and adding nuts and whatnot. And then when I went carnivore, it was more like butter and tallow. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. When you went like paleo, you were mentioning how you used to kind of eat a lot of snacks that were carbohydrate filled, and I was the same. So I knew that sugar wasn't ideal, so then I'd eat a lot of sugar-free candies, have a lot of low carb-ish snacks, even when I was plant-based and had a lot of carbohydrates still. So how did you kind of transition to all of a sudden cut out all the sugar? Like, how did you manage your cravings?
So at the start, I just cut out all processed sugar, and I was still eating a lot of natural sugar, but I think even that, just cutting out all the processed stuff, like I was never having ice cream or cake or chocolate, these things that I would have pretty frequently. I think I can't really remember having too many cravings at that time. I think I was still replacing it with bananas and whatnot, and that was kind of filling my sweet tooth. And then when I went to keto, I was actually really hesitant because I didn't want to give up bananas, and I was just, so hesitant. That was a very scary thought, to not have bananas and all these fruits anymore, pineapple and whatnot. I think just fat bombs and stuff helped kill the cravings at that point in time, like making little chocolate things with coconut oil and whatnot. That really worked well for me.
Yeah, and same with me. So when I transitioned to keto, it was helpful to take the fat bombs, but then occasionally those fat bombs were what made me, with the sweetener, were what brought me back to kind of real sugar. And
Yeah.
so then when I went carnivore, for me, what helped was just eating more meat, at least while you're
Mm,
transitioning. Just as eating as much meat whenever you crave something, just eat more meat. And then I noticed if you eat more fat, your cravings, because you are so satiated, your
mm.
cravings are much, they're far more lessened. So that's like another recommendation I give too. So I think that's probably why maybe your cravings diminished as well, as that as you increase the red meat and having more nutrients and all the fat, like all of those things sort of benefit you. So
Yeah.
how long have you been carnivore now? And then kind of when did you, or what did you kind of add back in terms of like these keto plants?
So it was a bit over 2 years ago now that I first did, I think I did 5 or 6 weeks of carnivore, didn't eat any plants at all. After that first 5 or 6 weeks, I added back in like avocado, olives, olive oil, and a few vegetables here and there. But when I eat at home, it's mainly carnivore and maybe a few plants. When I eat out, I give myself a little bit more wiggle room and I try to eat more keto or at least paleo. And that's kind of how I have found a little bit of balance. I know that doesn't work for everyone, but I don't eat out very often. Yeah, other than that, I try to avoid nuts. Those are a problem for me. Very easy to overconsume. I
Yeah.
think a lot of people experience that with nuts,
Do you
macadamias especially.
do you get, oh, same with me with macadamia nuts.
Oh, it's so
Do
good.
you, yeah, do you have any of the like anti-nutrient type of symptoms, or is it just the kind of overconsumption?
Mainly the overconsumption. Sometimes I'll get a little bit of like digestive distress from things like almonds and whatnot. Nothing else beyond that, though. I'm pretty lucky in that sense. I know that can be an issue for a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely think the anti-nutrients are very individual. So I have some clients
Mm-hmm.
that will eat a little bit of nut butter, which, in general, it's not good for the gut, but they can tolerate it and they want that variety. So then they still include it. And then some people just, they can't tolerate it because they start getting joint pain and just aches and bloat and swelling. And then it's just not worth it at a certain point. So
Yeah.
I think it's very individual. And I think it's really good that you do that. So let's talk a little bit about your graphics. Your graphics are so pretty.
Thank you.
Yeah, even when you emailed me and I was like, oh, look at her little like logo. It's so pretty. It just, yeah, it's very becoming. So, what made you start doing graphics and, sharing your info that way? I can totally relate, but I'm just curious, like your point of view, like why do you do graphics and, what inspires you to do graphics?
Yeah. So when I first started looking into the carnivore diet, I think that's when it began because a lot of the graphics on Instagram are aimed at just very mainstream nutrition advice. It's all very calories in, calories out, that sort of thing. And I thought that there was so much that needed to be said and that a lot of people could benefit from. Like a lot of, I think I posted a graphic today about cow's digestion versus human digestion. And that was something that I was hearing on podcasts and I was doing a lot of research in, like how we can't get the same nutrients from eating plants as cows can because of our digestive systems. And that information just wasn't out there. So I wanted to get this information out there in a way that was easy to understand, simple graphics that could just reach more people and kind of correct some of the myths about nutrition, about meat, about fat, all this stuff that were out there.
That makes sense. So, obviously we're not doing mainstream nutrition. So sometimes we get hate from, let's say, vegans or, other groups. So what have you kind of liked about doing the graphics? And then what has been some of the kind of harder points?
Yeah. What I like about it is when I get comments and people saying that they didn't understand the topic, but how I explained it was simple enough and now they get it. And just when I get comments from people saying that my information has helped them, that they upped their fat, that they upped their meat intake, they switched from margarine to butter, and they've seen improvements to their health, that really motivates me and really encourages me. That's great to see. The hardest part is, like you said, people from other diet groups, if you will, saying that what I'm saying is wrong, which fair enough, they can have their own opinion. But what is irritating is when you try to have a conversation with people from other diet groups and they just totally shut you down. You're wrong, they're right, and you don't really get anywhere. And that's just really frustrating to have that same conversation over and over again. So what I try to do is address a lot of the concerns that I hear from people in my graphics and in my content so that it's out there and I don't have to keep having these little arguments with other people.
And I think for me also, it's fine if we're talking about ideas and how we differ in opinions on whether cholesterol is good for us or not. But when they start attacking you as an individual, that's when it's like, okay, I don't even know you. You don't even have like your picture on your, and it's just, that's when it gets harder. But it's all the other people we meet and the connections and the people that say that our graphics help, right? That makes it, I'm still going to share, because for every like one bad apple, there's so many wonderful people that we get to meet, right? So
100%. And you also have to think that so many people don't take the time to comment. The people who comment are the people with the strongest opinions. So there's a lot of people who are following you, who are looking at your content, who are benefiting from it, but who aren't saying anything. So you need to remember those people as well. I find that helps when I'm getting a bit down about it. Yeah.
That's a really good point, because lately when I have been sharing about like kind of anti-sugar, I've noticed that not a ton of people may like or whatever it is. And I mean, I never care about that stuff, but I noticed it. But when I look at some of like the metrics, I see it's been shared a lot or it's saved a lot. And it's like, okay, so there is a reason why I'm sharing this information, that maybe you don't need carbs, for example, for hormone health. But, sometimes when you get so much negativity, you're like, okay, am I kind of crazy? You know what I mean? So
yes,
you're right. You just got to remember that not everyone is as outspoken. Like even my husband never, ever has commented on any of my posts, but but he definitely sees all of them. So you're right. That's such a good thing to bring up, because not everyone is outspoken, and we are doing it for like the collective good of the community. And that's, I think, the most important.
Yeah. And also just remembering your purpose, I find that helps as well. Like people will accuse me of spreading misinformation, like we don't need to eat meat, things like that. And I just have to take a step back and be like, well, why am I spreading this message? I don't have an ulterior motive besides helping people improve their health. And
right. Yeah. So you have a coaching, like a 30-day coaching. Can you talk about it? Like what exactly it is? And then if you can talk about maybe some of the most common kind of issues that people have when they start going meat-based.
Yeah, sure. So I have a 4-week program called Keto to Carnivore. And the aim of that program is to help people transition from a keto to carnivore diet, because I was finding a lot of my followers were currently keto and they wanted to make the switch, even just for a short period of time, just to experience the benefits, maybe get through a plateau and whatnot. So it's set up like an online course. Each week you kind of get information to learn about the carnivore diet. There's actually a 1 week before you officially start the carnivore diet that gives you shopping lists and answers a whole bunch of frequently asked questions about fiber, vitamins and minerals and whatnot, just so you can get started on the right foot, and electrolytes. That's really important as well. And then the idea is you go 4 weeks on a carnivore diet. And as you go through, there's just more information about tweaking the diet. Maybe you want to lose weight or gain muscle, and just adjusting your macros if you need to, and things like that. That's the program. What was the second part of the question?
Well, let me ask you a follow-up question, actually. So do you do lives with them, or do you do like a Q&A with this group too?
Yeah, so the group, I have a private Facebook group,
Okay.
so everyone can ask questions there, and I get back to everyone within 24 hours. I
That's
occasionally do
awesome.
live stream Q&As through that as well. Yeah,
Okay, and I'll put the courses show in the show notes as well. The other question I had
perfect.
was about, I'm sure that you get kind of common questions as people transition. So what are some of the common kind of struggles that people seem to have as they transition from keto to carnivore?
Um, I think how much they should eat. That's a really common question people have because when you're keto, you're eating a wide range of foods, and meat is maybe only making up a small portion of your plate, of your meal. But then when you transition to carnivore, I find a lot of people tend to undereat because they're used to eating smaller portions of meat, when in reality they need to eat more because that's all you're eating now. So that's one thing that I find a lot of people kind of struggle with. And how I address that is I think you should be eating until satiety. So if you're not full after your meal, then cook up some more eggs, cook up some more meat. You need to be eating until you're full. And I think that's the best way to transition and to get adjusted to the carnivore diet. After that, a few weeks in, if you're not making progress towards your goals, then maybe we can adjust macros and whatnot. But yeah, just food quantity, I think, is one common issue.
I agree. I definitely see people under eating, and then I see people hearing that they have to eat a certain amount and they just kind of follow suit. But
Yeah.
what would you say if someone's like, because I get this a lot too, but well, I can't read my satiety cues, or I can't tell when I'm full. So how do I know, right? So like, what would you say to that?
It's different when you're just eating a steak as compared to when you're eating a whole bunch of different foods on your plate and switching from one to the other. I
Mhm.
think people will be surprised how in tune with their hunger cues they can be when they're just eating one food, when they're just eating meat and fat. So definitely to someone who's asking that, I would say just give it a go, see how you do. It's pretty hard to overeat protein. It's not like potato chips or something where you can keep eating them and then be absolutely stuffed. When you get full with a piece of meat, that's it. You're just full. That's kind of what I've found.
Yeah, no, I interviewed a social psychologist, and he's very into kind of how we, evolved into these humans and how we are now and how our communities were set up and all these things. And one thing he touched upon was satiety mechanisms. And so it's very similar to what you're saying. I haven't seen it to be fully true in my kind of practice, but
Mm.
he says basically that we're wired that, maybe our minds get, or, our bodies know that we're getting all the nutrition from one meat. And then when we kind of are full with those
Mm.
certain specific nutrients, like say in steak, then our body will be like, okay, I don't want it anymore. And the kind of cue is when you're like, I want to have another bite, you don't really want it. And that's kind of like a cue. And not everyone gets that cue, but then when you think of like, oh, I'll have like chicken wings or some cheese, you're like, oh yeah, I can eat that. And that's like a cue of, maybe there's other nutrition in those other foods, or and again, this is kind of his assumption or what he was
Okay.
telling me. But it's really interesting because that's one thing I used to tell some of my clients that say that they can eat forever. I'll say, okay, well then just stick to one kind of meat for about a week and see if you really can just eat forever.
Yeah.
And I've seen it helps sometimes, but sometimes people are like, it didn't really help as much. But I think that's when I'm like, you should kind of include more fat. And I've seen that help a little bit.
Mm.
But then it's like the issue of, but now I'm gaining weight, right? So it's like this always this constant balance.
Yeah, definitely. It's so individual as well.
Yeah. So what are some other questions that you have received, in this kind of workshop?
Well, the question about fiber
Oh, yeah.
also comes up quite often. The need for it, where do you get fiber on a carnivore diet? And my answer is always, we don't actually require fiber. It's not necessary for our health. Some people may do well eating more fiber, but some people might do well eating less fiber or no fiber. We do not need it. And yeah, that's one really common question. And then the vitamins and minerals, how are you going to get all your nutrition if you are only eating meat? And obviously you can get all the nutrients you need in more bioavailable forms in meat. That's my answer to that one. Those are probably the main ones that I get. Yeah.
Do you think that your 4-week study could also help people that are not carnivore? So let's say they're just coming from like a paleo or standard American diet.
Yeah, I think so. It emphasizes the importance of meat, and yeah, so yeah, definitely. I think it could help someone else too.
Okay. Within kind of your community, have you seen anyone that needed to add back carbs for optimal health? For maybe
Um,
hormones, thyroid, yeah.
no, I haven't seen that. Some people do say they feel better eating them, and if it works for you, then I think that's totally fine. What I always say is experiment without them, experiment with them, see how you feel, and come to your own conclusions. But as far as I can tell, they aren't actually necessary to keep hormones in balance, and yeah, for thyroid and things like that.
Yeah, I agree. I know that there are many carnivores that say they just sleep better with carbs. And so for that, at night, they eat a little bit of carbs to kind of just knock out better. I just have not seen from like the Aura Ring or the data that shows that you actually sleep better. Maybe you kind of knock out. And I'm really trying to figure out the mechanisms of why that happens with carbohydrates. Maybe it's like just the excess glucose. I'm not really sure. I need to look into it more. But what I've found from a majority of my clients that don't eat enough and then they can't sleep, it's because they don't eat enough. So they're not eating enough fat, their body's malnourished. So probably their cortisol's higher, which then doesn't make them sleep enough because their body's like, go look for food before you die kind of thing. But other than that, I see the opposite actually, that people heal their thyroid and hormone health and need less medication or can get off medication by following a carnivore diet. So yeah, it's interesting. I just kind of curious if you've seen it where people actually need carbs back, but
No, I haven't.
okay, it's good to know. So, is there any kind of, from your beginners, group and just all your, the many followers you have that follow you for all your graphics and, meat-based kind of nutrition guidance. What is some like recommendations or guidance you can give the people that are watching?
I think, as we've spoken about a few times already, is just eating enough. Make sure you are eating enough. That is so important. If you're trying to heal health conditions, make sure you're eating enough and don't worry about weight loss or weight gain in the beginning, for sure. Things will even out when they're meant to in terms of your weight. Beyond that, I think that we don't need to stick to very strict diet labels. I don't think it's necessary to eat 100% carnivore just so you can call yourself a carnivore. If that doesn't work for your lifestyle, like you can add an avocado back in. That's totally fine. You really need to experiment and find what works for you and not be dogmatic about it and not think that what you are doing is the only thing that works and that there's no other options. I think that also makes the diet, keto and carnivore, more approachable when you know that you don't have to eat this way for the rest of your life. You can try it, see how you do, and take things from it that you've learned and incorporate that going forward, even if you don't stick to the diet strictly.
Yeah, no, I think that's great information. I know personally when I first started, there was a little bit of dogma of like, you're either carnivore or you're not. So anything that's plant-based or I don't know, even like spices is not carnivore, right? So I remember being so dogmatic in the way I ate, not necessarily how I was helping my clients, but just like if we would go out and on the barbecue, there was a little bit of sugar rub or a little bit of seasoning. I'm like, that black pepper has oxalated. I cannot eat it. And so I used to be so strict and my husband would always like, it would drive him crazy because he's like, we can't eat anywhere because of you. And so, so a lot of times I would just literally bring my steak to the restaurants we're going to, or I'd eat a lot more and then just eat like very basic foods out there. But I've loosened up because I realized it's just dogma. And I think it took me several clients that they had similar mindsets. And I don't know if it's, just where they started from the carnivore movement, but even though they could maybe tolerate plants or they wanted to try it, they had this fear of, but then I'm not carnivore anymore, you know? And I was like, there is no carnivore award at the end of the day, or no prize. You're
Yeah.
not going to go to bed and be like, yes, I won the carnivore award. Like I have been carnivore for 10 years, but now I can't say that because I ate, you know, a piece of plant. Like it's for your health, and no one's going to give you any accolades, and you need to find what works for you. So like you said, if now I can go out and have a little bit of sugar in the rub and it doesn't cause any sugar cravings, or I can have a little bit of black pepper and it's doesn't have a huge reaction, and this is kind of also showing resiliency in your body too, right? Then who cares? Like there's no carnivore police. And sometimes like when we're outside, my husband will go, what if someone takes a picture of you? And I'm like, okay, you know, like it's not a big deal. It's just,
Yeah.
yeah, you got to find what works for you. I'm like 99.9% carnivore, but it just works for me, right? But some of my clients will occasionally have, let's see, I wouldn't say dairy, like maybe a few vegetables, but in general, you know, they feel better eating carnivore. So it's kind of like at a certain point, you know that maybe carnivore makes you feel the best, but then you want to include lifestyle. And then it's like, how much are you willing to kind of sacrifice
Mm-hmm.
to have a, you know, a more like easy life balance? And people do that even with managing weight, right? So there are some people that need to cut more than maybe their body wants, and so they may have to cut calories or cut protein or fat, but they're willing to make that sacrifice to be at that weight. And I think
Yeah.
kind of same thing goes with diets, right? You just need to find what works for you. But where I have my heartburn is when someone's like, you need fiber, or you need vitamin C, or you need carbs for hormone
Yeah.
health. And that's when it's like, that's the dogma. Like, I'm not dogma because I'm saying I don't agree with that. Like, that makes no logical sense, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally
yeah,
agree.
yeah.
Yeah. The goal is health.
Yes,
That's
yes.
why we're eating this way. And if you're miserable, if you're not able to stick to it, if it's stressing you out too much, then you're not going to be as healthy as you want to be. And that was your goal going into it. So yeah, you just need to
Yeah, and so I
find that.
actually really appreciated that you shared, you know, that you are eat a, you know, a little bit more than that, but you're still very meat-based focused, and
Mhm.
that's the kind of ultimate goal. And so I appreciated that you're not just like, I'm going to eat it behind the scenes and not be as open, because I think when
Yeah.
we show flexibility, it allows people that are, you know, maybe looking at us for guidance that, okay, I don't have to be as dogmatic, but that doesn't mean also to now use this as a green light to go cheat and feel crappy
Yeah.
and have cheat days and, you know, then kind of tinker with your health that way. Like I'm not a proponent of that, but find your balance, right? Like this is not a 1 mile run. It's more of a like journey and marathon and so on and so forth. So yeah, I appreciate kind of your message with that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Well, it was really good talking to you. I mean, you know, I'll never forget our conversation at Whole Foods. It was so good. And then
Oh,
that's where you introduced me, because I was telling you that sometimes the USDA database is, you know, subpar. And you're like, yeah, try that
yeah.
German database out. And I remember looking and I was like, this is all not in English. And I don't, yeah. So I remember giving up on it. But yeah, it was very insightful. And, you know, you've always been very helpful and open. And I appreciate that.
Oh, same to you. I love everything you do, Judy.
Thank
I
you.
love seeing your posts. I was so sad when you weren't posting for a few months working on the book. I'm very much looking forward to it, though. It's going to be very helpful
Yeah,
for a
yeah.
lot of people, I'm sure.
And you too. So where can people find you?
On YouTube, Health Coach Kate, on Instagram. Those are the two platforms that I'm most active on. But also on Facebook and Twitter. I do post there as well sometimes. And yeah, my website, healthcoachkate.com.
Yeah, and your YouTube videos are really helpful too. Like I know you put in a lot of effort for those, because like the, you know, like what I eat in a day, or, you know, based on certain conversations. And I think those are really helpful. But I know personally they take a lot of time and I don't have the bandwidth. So I appreciate that
Yeah.
you do that, because it takes a lot of effort. And I remember showing my husband your video and I was like, look how clean her videos are. Like they're so helpful. They're so, you know, professional. So I just
Oh,
wanted to, you know, publicly say to you that they're really good.
thank you so much.
Ah, yeah. Okay, well, thank you for joining me again, and we'll have to do this again.
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely.
I'll talk to you soon, Kate. Take care.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Okay, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you guys enjoyed the talk and that you guys learned a little bit more about Kait. All right, guys, you know the drill. Make sure to eat a lot of meat. Take care of your bodies because it is the only place you have to live. Take care. Bye, guys.